You'll probably notice they are all payroll related. A comment down at the bottom. It was just a peculiarity of the way the pay periods fell in May and in June. There were actually 3 payments to be made to a PERS. The 2 sets, one is just our payment of the withholdings from the employees. The second set, which says salary reduction, is the the regular is the village share, the salary reduction is the employee share. PRS wants those both paid at the same time. Police and fire pension, they bill us quarterly for the village share. Personally, I just assume they bill us monthly, but they want to do it quarterly. It can add up real fast. If we have cash flow problems, we may not be able to make that quarterly payment. The last one was $13,000, I believe. So it's a lot easier to pay $1,500 every pay period than $13,000 once every 3 months. So those are the bills. The other thing, I've started working on getting some numbers together for a 2012 budget. The budget does need to be approved by July 15th and given to Linda Fraley, Claremont County Auditor, by July 20th. I don't know how strict she is, but technically if the budget is not submitted to her by the 20th, we may not have any tax revenues at all. It is within her authority to do that. Going through the current levies, I estimated the collections for 2012. For 2011, the county auditor estimated about $975,000 for the general fund, the 2 police levies, and the fire fund. 2011 tax year, which will be collected next calendar year, according to Mike Sobel, who's the chief analyst for the Department of Taxation, we're looking at, as of April 1st, a 6 to 8% decrease in values for the village. Without knowing how that would impact the effective tax rates, I just used the same numbers, and the total is going to be about $900,000 in 2012. The police levies combined will go from $531,000 to about $485,000. I used to have a copy of how the effective tax rates were calculated, and it was 21 pages long. I don't feel like going through that. If you look at a copy of the tax abstract, they're available. I have a copy in my office for Claremont County last year, but there are about 18 or 20 items that are taken into account to determine just the current value of a subdivision, and then each of those impact the effective tax rate differently. New construction will have no effect. Border revision may or may not have an effect. Destroyed buildings will have an effect in our favor. And just the age of the levy will have an effect. The one police levy is 1999, voted at 7 mills, currently being collected at 4.9. It may go up to 5 mills next year, effective rate. If, again, it just depends on how everything falls out of the Department of Taxation, or it could even go lower. I don't know. That, as I said, depends on new construction, border revision, demolished property, sales. I mean, there's so many things that fall into it, and since the county's in an update situation, that also gets plugged into the formula.
Anything else for council?
That should do it, other than the previously mentioned loans for the Church Street.
You have bills for approval here?
Motion, we pay the bills?
Getting back to Church Street, should we do anything, even though we don't have a grant, in order to
We have some
facilitate the situation?
We have some legislation
Oh, we
this evening. We
Very
can talk about that.
Kevin, I'll second that bill.
All right.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Bills are approved. Next item on the agenda this evening is legislation. We have several pieces of legislation for us for discussion and consideration this evening. Because of the nature of pretty much all of these, will be read as emergencies. The first is ordinance number O-2011-23, an ordinance enacting and adopting a supplement to the code of ordinances from a village, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. This time I entertain a motion to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
So
I'll second.
Before I move to discussion, I'll ask for a summary from the solicitor.
This is we get supplements to our municipal code every year. And what they do is they basically make sure it's consistent with state law. So there's a lot of revisions to the criminal code we enforce. So we need to have it supplemented, make sure we're compliant with what the revised code says.
Any other questions, discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Gerber, or Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
6-0.
All right, ordinance number O-2011-23. At this time, I entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Discussion and or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Ordinance number O-2011-23 is adopted. The next ordinance for consideration this evening, ordinance number O-2011-24. An ordinance authorizing the mayor and CDS Associates Incorporated to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and/or local transportation improvement programs, and to execute contracts as required in declaring an emergency. At this time, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
I so move.
Second.
Discussion and or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Thacker.
No.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
5-1.
Ordinance number O-2011, this is moving on the same ordinance. Ordinance number O-2011-24. This time I entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
I so move. Second.
Discussion and or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Nay.
5-1.
Next ordinance is ordinance number O-2011-25. An ordinance authorizing the mayor and fiscal officer to execute a cooperation agreement with Claremont County and Batavia Township to submit an application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for funding of the Church Street and Chapel Road Improvement Project and declaring an emergency. This time I entertain a motion from council to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
So moved. Second.
Stereo.
Discussion? Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Thacker,
Nay.
Mr. Rosser,
Yay.
Mr. Pollock,
Yay.
Ms. Gerber,
Yay.
Mr. Hart,
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
5-1.
For adoption of the same ordinance, O-2011-25. This time I entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
I make a motion to adopt it.
Second.
Discussion and/or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell,
Yay.
Mr. Hart,
Yay.
Ms. Gerber,
Yay.
Mr. Pollock,
Yay.
Mr. Rosser,
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Nay.
Ordinance number O-2011-25 is adopted. Next ordinance for consideration, ordinance number O-2011-26. An ordinance repealing ordinance number O-2011-06, which declared 0.435 acres of real estate or real property located on Oak Street, Amelia, Ohio, to be surplus property and declaring an emergency. This time I entertain a motion to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Discussion? Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Campbell,
Yay.
Ms. Gerber,
Yay.
Mr. Hart,
Yay.
Mr. Pollock,
Yay.
Mr. Rosser,
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
So next reading is to adopt this ordinance, ordinance number O-2011-26. This time I entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell,
Yay.
Ms. Gerber,
Yay.
Mr. Hart,
Yay.
Mr. Pollock,
Yay.
Mr. Rosser,
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Thank you. Next ordinance this evening for consideration, ordinance number O-2011-27. An ordinance adopting the partial overtime exemption of the Fair Labor Standards Act for police personnel and declaring an emergency. At this time, I entertain a motion from council to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Thacker,
Yay.
Mr. Rosser,
Yay.
Mr. Pollock,
Yay.
Ms. Gerber,
Yay.
Mr. Hart,
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
6-0.
This time, I entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance, ordinance number O-2011-27.
So moved. I'll second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Thacker,
Yay.
Mr. Rosser,
Yay.
Mr. Pollock,
Yay.
Ms. Gerber,
Yay.
Mr. Hart,
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
6-0 passes.
Next ordinance this evening is number O-2011-28. An ordinance revising the Amelia Village Personnel Policy Manual and Amelia Village Particularized Police Department Personnel Policies to reflect the adoption of the partial overtime exemption of the Fair Labor Standards Act and ordinance number O-2011-27 and declaring an emergency. At this time, I entertain a motion from council to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
So moved. Second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell,
Yay.
Ms. Gerber,
Yay.
Mr. Hart,
Yay.
Mr. Pollock,
Yay.
Mr. Rosser,
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
6-0.
This time I entertain a motion from council to adopt ordinance number O-2011-28.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Discussion? Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Campbell,
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Pollak.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Ordinance number O-2011-28 is adopted. Next ordinance for consideration this evening, ordinance number O-2011-29, an ordinance revising the Amelia Village particularized police department personnel policies to remove the quarterly uniform allowance payment and declaring an emergency. At this time, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules of council for 3 readings on 3 dates.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Pollak.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Thank you. At this time, I entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number O-2011-29.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Pollak.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Ordinance number O-2011-29 is adopted. Next ordinance for consideration, ordinance number number O-2011-30, an ordinance repealing section 5 of ordinance number O-2000-37, which established a quarterly uniform allowance payment provision for the part-time police officers and declaring an emergency. At this time, I entertain a motion to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
So moved. Second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Pollak.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
6-0.
At this time, I'm going to entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number O-2011-30.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Pollak.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
6-0.
6-0.
Ordinance number O-2011-30 is adopted. Next ordinance for consideration, ordinance number O-2011-31, an ordinance amending section 3 of the ordinance O-2000-37 pertaining to the minimum hours of work for part-time police officers, establishing the minimum and maximum hours of work for part-time police officers in a 14-day work period and declaring an emergency. At this time, I entertain a motion from the council to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Pollak.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Passes.
This time I entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number O-2011-31.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion and or questions? Roll call.
Mr. Thacker.
Sorry, I'm drinking. I wasn't expecting it. Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Pollak.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
6-0.
Ordinance number O-2011-31 is adopted. Next ordinance for consideration this evening, ordinance number O-2011-32, an ordinance revising the Amelia Village particularized police department personnel policies to reflect the minimum and maximum hours of work for part-time police officers and declaring an emergency. This time I entertain a motion from council to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Discussion? Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Pollak.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
6-0.
That was the reading, correct? That was an adoption.
That was suspending the rules. Yeah.
Ordinance number O-2011-32. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
Second.
Discussion. Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yay.
And Mr. Thacker.
Yeah.
Passes 6-0.
Ordinance number O-2011-32 is adopted. The next ordinance for consideration, ordinance number O-2011-33, an ordinance amending ordinance number O-2004-74, ordinance O-2006-11, ordinance O-2008-41, and removing the minimum and/or maximum hour requirement for part-time police officers contained in each ordinance and declaring an emergency. At this time, I would entertain a motion from council to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
So moved. Second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yeah.
Mr. Thacker.
Yeah.
Ordinance number O-2011-33. At this time, I entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion and or questions? Roll call.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yeah.
Mr. Thacker.
Yeah.
6-0. Passes.
Ordinance number O-2011-33 is adopted. Next legislation is a resolution. Resolution number R-2011-01. A resolution repealing Resolution R-8511 entitled a resolution by Council of Amelia Village. Let me start over again. A resolution repealing Resolution R-85-11 entitled a resolution by the Council of the Village of Amelia, County of Claremont, State of Ohio, adopting guidelines set forth by recent Supreme Court rulings making it mandatory for local governments to abide by the minimum wage and overtime provisions of Federal Labor Standards Acts and prescribing policy to assist in conforming to those stated guidelines, with all being effective on October 15, 1985, and retroactive to April 15, 1985, and declaring an emergency. At this time,
I didn't write that title.
huh?
I didn't write that title.
This time, I entertain a motion to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yeah.
Mr. Thacker.
Yeah.
Passes.
This time, I entertain a motion to adopt resolution number R-2011-01. I'm going to read it again just to make you guys suffer. I'm just kidding. Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Oh, wait a minute.
No.
I didn't get the motions.
Renee. I mean,
Oh.
so moved.
Second.
I've been writing names down.
Too
Other
many.
discussion or
I
questions?
don't know.
Roll call this time.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Rosser.
Yeah.
Mr. Thacker.
Yeah.
6-0.
Resolution number R-2011-01 is, well, stumbled on, but was adopted.
Nonetheless.
The last piece of legislation this evening is resolution number R-2011-02. A resolution amending resolution R-99-01 and removing the maximum hour requirement contained therein for the part-time police officer appointed by that resolution, and declaring an emergency. At this time, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules for 3 readings on 3 dates.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion and or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell,
Yay.
Ms. Gerber,
Yeah.
Mr. Hart,
Yay.
Mr. Pollock,
Yay.
Mr. Rosser,
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Passes.
At this time, I'm entertaining a motion to adopt resolution number R-2011-02.
So moved. Second.
Discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell,
Yay.
Ms. Gerber,
Yay.
Mr. Hart,
Yay.
Mr. Pollock,
Yay.
Mr. Rosser,
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Resolution number R-2011-02 is adopted. That concludes the legislation portion of tonight's meeting. This time I'll open the floor to,
Mayor, before we do that,
say it again.
before we do that,
Yes.
might I suggest, Mr. Pollock correctly stated that we really should act on the loans this evening. Once we submit this application on July 15th, we basically have committed that money. So when I talked to Mr. Powell earlier today, it's pretty clear that we're going to need that loan if we're going to do any other work on the road. So since you voted to submit the application, I think at this point it makes sense to consider whether you're going to do a loan or not.
But what if we don't get approved for the grant, and we pay do we pay $1,000 for
You could pay
the loan application fee?
Fifth Third did not say.
I would think that if you submit, you're paying $1,000 no matter what.
Then we could wait and submit later, but I believe it times out on the rate on July. July 30th or something.
July 27th.
Did it-
So can we check on that and then go to the next meeting, see if we're paying that $1,000 no matter what?
We can't, I'm not sure your timeline meets that. 18, yeah, because Pat Madel wants to basically have the application submitted around then.
What do we do to know, when did they release, who
The results?
Yeah.
I don't know, on this particular grant cycle. I mean, Pat may know.
It's usually, well, the last time was like 6 weeks.
And I think we can, if we don't take the money, and there's no application process here.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
I
If
think
if
they'll
we don't have to
probably
pay
waive
the
the fee if we
$1,000,
don't
yeah,
pull.
we put it in, and,
We could
but the
certainly
way
make
it looked like they
It's a provision.
kind of looked like they're already saying this is what would be available to you, so.
you could make the motion allowing it, assuming that fee will be waived, and that's fine, we can do that.
There's always a chance they might decide to roll that $1,000 into the loan principal like a home mortgage with points.
I think if we never take any of the money, they'll waive that fee. Now, I can understand if they're doing like a mortgage where they have a lot of due diligence, they haven't done any due diligence.
Yeah, at this point, what they've got in it is a proposal.
Yeah, nothing.
So we need to make, what?
Can we do that in a motion if we don't get the grant and we don't?
Oh, we wouldn't take the money, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like Derek, I don't want to let them say, well, too bad, you're still going to pay $1,000.
What I would suggest is that you do the motion so that it authorizes the mayor and the fiscal officer to execute the loan documents, so long as the $1,000 will be waived if the village does not actually accept the money from the loan.
I'll make that motion.
Would you be
Did
kind
you
enough-
get all that?
No, because I was reading the cooperation agreement, and it does give three options. Invoices, pay the cost